Ever wonder how much of history was planned and how much was just a happy accident? Or maybe not so happy, depending on who you ask? We love to think of history as this grand narrative driven by powerful leaders and brilliant strategies. But what if I told you that some of the biggest turning points in our past were caused by a flea bite, a math error, a sudden storm, or even a simple sniffle? Today, we're diving into the incredible story of how pure, dumb luck and bizarre accidents built the world we live in. Let's start with a tiny culprit with a massive kill count, the common flea. When we think of medieval Europe, we often picture knights and castles, but the real game changer wasn't a king. It was a bacterium carried by fleas on the back of rats. The Black Death didn't just wipe out a third of Europe's population, it completely upended the social order. With so many workers gone, the old feudal system crumbled. Suddenly, peasants had bargaining power. They could demand better wages and more freedom. Landowners had to adapt or go bust. This single, terrifying pandemic spread by an insect paved the way for the end of serfdom and the rise of a new middle class. It wasn't a revolution of swords. It was a revolution caused by a forgotten bite, a horrifying but undeniably powerful accident of nature. Now, let's sail across the ocean with a man who was famously and fruitfully wrong, Christopher Columbus. We all know the story. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But why? He wasn't trying to prove the world was round. Most educated people already knew that. His real goal was to find a direct sea route to Asia to get a piece of the lucrative spice trade. He just made one tiny mistake. He dramatically underestimated the size of the Earth. His math was completely off. He thought Asia was just a few thousand miles west of Europe, so when he bumped into the Americas, he was convinced he'd reached the East Indies. That's why he called the native people Indians. This colossal blunder didn't lead him to the spices he sought, but it did lead to the discovery of two entire continents by Europeans, an entire hemisphere unveiled by a navigational error. The course of human history was forever altered, all because one man was really, really bad at geography. From a miscalculation on the sea to a miracle in the sky. Picture this. It's 1588. The mighty Spanish Armada, the most powerful naval fleet the world had ever seen, is sailing to invade England. Queen Elizabeth III's small, scrappy navy is hopelessly outmatched. It looks like the end for Protestant England. The English ships manage to harass the Spanish fleet, but they can't land a decisive blow. The Armada regroups, ready for the final invasion. And then the weather turns. A massive, unseasonal tempest, what the English called the Protestant wind, blows the Spanish fleet north, scattering their ships and smashing many against the rocky coasts of Scotland and Ireland. The invasion was off. Spain's dominance of the seas was broken, and England's path to becoming a global naval power was cleared. Was it divine intervention? Or just a freak storm at the perfect moment? Either way, a random change in the weather saved a nation and reshaped the balance of world power. Accidents don't just shape empires, they can also spark scientific revolutions. In 1928, a Scottish scientist named Alexander Fleming returned to his lab after a vacation. He was notoriously messy, and before he left, he'd forgotten to clean up a stack of Petri dishes containing Staphylococcus bacteria. But he noticed something odd. On one dish, a patch of mold was growing, and around that mold, the bacteria were completely gone. Something in the mold was killing them. That something was penicillin. Fleming had stumbled upon the world's first antibiotic. It took another decade for other scientists to figure out how to mass produce it, but this one accidental discovery would go on to save hundreds of millions of lives. It transformed medicine, making surgeries safer and once deadly infections treatable, all because of a messy lab and a forgotten Petri dish. Let's jump back to the 19th century for another happy lab accident. In 1856, a young chemist named William Henry Perkin was trying to synthesize quinine, an anti-malaria drug. His experiment was a total failure. Instead of the clear substance he was hoping for, he ended up with a thick, dark sludge. Frustrated, he was about to throw it all away, but as he was cleaning his flask with alcohol, he noticed the sludge dissolved into a beautiful, vibrant purple color. He realized he hadn't made a medicine, but he had made something else entirely, the world's first synthetic dye. He called it Movin. Before this, dyes were expensive and came from natural sources like plants and insects. Perkin's accidental discovery kicked off the modern synthetic chemical industry, changing fashion, manufacturing, and science forever. The world suddenly became a much more colorful place, all thanks to a failed experiment and a sticky purple mess. And what about the way we share all this knowledge? We have Johannes Gutenberg to thank for the printing press, right? Well, sort of, but his big idea wasn't entirely original. He was a goldsmith, familiar with precision metalwork, but the key mechanism for his press, the screw that applied even pressure, was inspired by something far more common, a wine or fruit press. Farmers had been using these simple machines for centuries to squeeze juice from grapes and olives. Gutenberg simply adapted that existing everyday technology. He combined the screw press with his own invention of movable metal type to create a machine that could print books quickly and cheaply. This simple adaptation democratized knowledge, fueled the Renaissance and the Reformation, and literally changed the way we think. The information age began not in a flash of genius, but by looking at a humble fruit press and thinking, what if? Even on the battlefield and in the halls of power, chance plays a leading role. Imagine a general leading his army taking a wrong turn at a dusty crossroads. It seems like a minor error, a delay. But that wrong turn leads them directly into the flank of an unsuspecting enemy army. The element of surprise turns a potential disaster into a decisive victory, altering the outcome of a war and securing the future of a nation. This has happened more times in history than you might think. Victory and defeat, hanging on a single accidental change of direction. Or consider the delicate dance of royal succession. A king is healthy, his heir is strong, and the line of succession seems secure for generations. But then, the crown prince catches a cold. It develops into pneumonia, and he dies unexpectedly. Suddenly, a distant, overlooked relative, a third cousin perhaps with different ideas and alliances, is thrust onto the throne. This royal sniffle completely redirects the country's political trajectory. New alliances are formed, old enemies are made, and the course of the monarchy is forever changed by what started as a seemingly insignificant illness. Finally, think about the high-stakes world of diplomacy. Two nations are on the brink of war. Tensions are at an all-time high. A last-ditch negotiation is underway, but it's failing. One side is refusing to budge on a key issue. But what if a crucial memo, outlining a final, non-negotiable demand from their leader, gets lost? Maybe it's misfiled by a tired clerk or simply forgotten on a desk. Without that final, unyielding instruction, the negotiator on the ground has more flexibility. They make a small concession they weren't supposed to, the other side reciprocates, and a deal is struck. War is averted. The forgotten memo, a single piece of misplaced paper, becomes the unsung hero of peace, tipping the scales in a moment of crisis. So, from plagues and storms to lab spills and wrong turns, it's clear that history is far more random and unpredictable than we often admit. The grand tapestry of our past is woven not just with the threads of intention and design, but also with the countless, colorful threads of pure, unadulterated chance. These accidents remind us that the world can change in an instant, often when we least expect it. It's a humbling and, frankly, exciting thought. What accidents are happening right now that will shape the world of tomorrow? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the weird and wonderful accidents of history, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that will make you rethink everything. See you next time.